often than not, when one of these happens, what do we find out? People knew. Whether it was a parent or a friend, somebody knew that the shooter wasn't right. They were deranged. They were isolated. They had mental health issues. Maybe they had been treatment. Maybe they had medication, but they didn't want to stay on it. Why is it so hard to prevent these kinds of shootings in light of that? Here's somebody who has been taking this question very seriously and working towards an answer. Dr. Kelly Posner, Ph.D., the founder and principal investigator of the Center for Suicide Risk Assessment at Columbia University. She has developed a mental health questionnaire that is proven to help. Doc, it's good to have you here with us. We've known each other a long time. You've talked about this almost incessantly every time one of these happens. What do you see as the problem? What have you learned can help move toward a solution?
Well, you know, Chris, we know that 90% of shooters have well-documented suicidal issues. So if we screen, and that means just asking a few questions, that will give us a chance to identify these people before things like this happen. Not only do 90% have these well-documented issues that can help us catch them, but almost a third of them say that suicide was their motive. 90% of shooters, I'm sorry, 60% of shooters have had clear depression, extreme depression or desperation, yet only a small percentage have had any kind of mental health evaluation.
So this questionnaire, and I think we even have an example of one of the questions, because I think it's important for us to see that and understand sort of the line of questioning.
Yes.
Let's put it up. Have you wished you were dead? Or have you wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? That's counting on the person to self-report and to be honest. In those cases of 90%, can you trust that they will be forthcoming?
Yes, actually, you can. Most people who are suffering actually want help.
It's a cry for help.
And the problem is that people don't ask them the questions. You know, 50% of suicides have seen their primary care doctor the month before they die. We should be asking these questions like we monitor for blood pressure. Everybody, everywhere. And we can't rely on people to come and tell us. So yes, we can. And one of the very helpful things about these questions is it's tiered. So if they answer that, then the next question is, have you actually had thoughts of killing yourself? If that's no, they move on to a behavior question. If that's yes, however, then you get into the more serious questions that actually help us identify people at high risk.
And it's not academic, it's practical. You've put it to use and you've seen it work. Where and how?
Yes, we've seen it to work phenomenally, actually. It's been used all over the world, every corner of the world, from the schools in South Africa to the local police chiefs. 107,
even the military, right?
Even the military. 117 languages, so it's been rolled out throughout the entire Army and pretty much every aspect of the military. And you know what the Marines did? They did a total force rollout, and they went to all 16 installations, including Okinawa, and they trained every support worker.
Well, and that's the point that I wanted to bring up, because it's interesting. You think that it sort of has to be institutional, instructional, but you have given, I was reading your material, the case for even, you know, making sure the janitor is armed with some of these questions, because you say any person that comes in contact with somebody who has suicidal feelings can have an impact.
Exactly, because there may be places, you know, this big hospital system said, you know, we trained the janitors. And this clinician who had worked with the VA said, exactly, I'll never forget that case where the only person that vet spoke to was the janitor. Wow. And it doesn't mean the janitor is ever going to need to ask these questions, but if he's in that position where he does, he will. And what I was saying about the Marines, every time a lawyer or a clergy meets with a Marine, they do the screener, and guess what? They publish an article, they've reduced their suicide rate doing that and other things by 22%. Now this first quarter, 64%. In Tennessee, the largest provider in the country of outpatient care, they reduced their suicide rate by 65% in 20 months. And you know what? They brought it to life by telling a story about this man who they had called a few times and he said he was fine. The last time he said, you called me and asked me those questions, I was on the bridge. And if you hadn't, I wouldn't be alive.
What's the overlap, though, between someone who wants to commit suicide and somebody like this guy who wants to kill other people? Is there an overlap?
There is an overlap. You know, almost a third of them say suicide is actually their motive, right? And 90% of them have suicidal issues. So I'm not saying that that's the reason they're doing it always, but it's a way to identify them. And there is tremendous overlap.
So why hasn't it happened?
Right, that's the next question, right? Why is it not widely used? Why aren't all medical professionals using this? Schools, institutions?
You know, sometimes it's just about how you get the message out there, which is why I'm so grateful for this opportunity. There are about 40, 45 states that have started to go top down. That means schools, police.
Right.
Do you think a policeman wants to hospitalize somebody unnecessarily?
Right.
Definitely not. And you know what happens when they do? Shuts that person down from treatment when they actually need it. And the fact that entire communities can do this, and I just want to say it is imperative that the National Suicide Prevention Strategy implement community trainings where, you know, on suicide prevention and stress management. And part of that is about asking. We say just ask because it may save a life.
Dr. Kelly Posner, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. Is something that we care intensely about, and we want to see if we can make some headway here.
Fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.